Hey guys, so I did my Ignite presentation on dog training, and part of why I want to do this is because I'm asked all the time how my dog is so well behaved. This is Evie, she's my dog. She is very well behaved. Part of it is I'm very lucky, part of it was, well, I'll take a little bit of credit and say I did a really good job training her. Now, when training your dog, there's a couple things to note, and there's a couple things I'll kind of go over here. With her, I use a blend of negative and positive reinforcements, which I've done with all the dogs we've ever had. I've grown up with dogs. Your training regimen can look different based on what you're comfortable with, how many dogs you've had before, etc. Just kind of make it your own. But there are a couple important things to remember from the very start. There's lots of dog books out there that can help you use them as a guide and kind of go along with it, or do it your own way, however you want to do it. So, kind of what I did first, and the first thing I tell people is consistency is key. No matter what you decide to do, stick with that program from the very beginning. I tell people her training was nonstop for the first 2 years I had her. Consistency is super important. It's also important to make a list of the behaviors you want to train out of your dog and the specific things you want your dog to do. That way, you kind of know what you're working for and have an end goal in sight. It's also really important from the very beginning to decide what your words are going to be you're going to use, what your praise words will be, what your negative words will be, what your command words will be. That way you can be consistent in these from the very beginning. Now I'll start with the negative reinforcement because it's a much smaller portion. So what happens when your dog does something bad? I do use negative reinforcement with her. Now, this doesn't mean I hit the dog. I'm not a proponent of hitting your dog. That's not something you should do. Negative reinforcement can look differently. It can just be a negative word. For her, it was a flick in the ear or a pat on the butt along with the negative word. People use timeouts, however you want to do it. One thing you should not do, though, is use your dog's kennel or crate as punishment. I do recommend crate training your dog, but not using it as punishment. The crate should be a safe place for your dog. My dog is 3 and she still uses her crate because that is kind of her safe place. If I'm doing something, if she's bored, if there's a storm, anything like that, if you use the crate negatively, then it is no longer a safe place. So negative reinforcement, it can be something as small as a negative word and a flick on the ear. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. What's more important, though, is the positive reinforcement. Lots and lots of treats. The first 2 years, I literally carried treats around in my pocket all the time. And anytime the dog does something good, you give your dog a treat that reinforces the positive behavior you're trying to teach. Okay? It's really important. And if you have family that are helping train the dog, same thing. Treats when they do something good. If you have friends over, treats when your dog does something good, and then lots and lots of praise when your dog does that good behavior that you're looking for. These two together are super important. Praise and treats trains them to keep doing the behavior you want them to do. It's also really important to get your dog to socialize. We talk all the time, we're all teachers, we talk about kids and wanting our kids to socialize. Well, dogs need to socialize too. It trains them out of some of their negative behaviors if they're around other dogs. Get your dog around other dogs, going to the park, going on walks. Also, make sure you exercise your dog a lot. A lot of times when dogs do something that we see as bad or they tear something up, it's because they're bored. They need that stimulation. They need that exercise. Lots and lots of walks. Also, make sure you have a clear set routine. Dogs like routines. From the very beginning, figure out what that routine is going to be and then stick with it. Dogs need a good, solid routine. And most importantly, love. I always say there's no such thing as a bad dog. There's bad owners and bad trainers. Give your dog lots of love, give your dog lots of praise, and make sure your dog feels safe and at home with you. So those are your basics. Negative reinforcement when your dog does something wrong. This doesn't have to be anything big. It can just be a negative word, a small ear flick, a small pat on the butt, something like that that gets their attention and associates that negative action and the negative word, and then lots of praise and treats when they do something well. And make it your own. Again, this isn't going to look the same for everybody. I hope this helped. I hope that gave you some basics. Feel free to look more into this stuff and let me know if there's anything else you want to know.